Good morning, everyone.
Try this again. There's a little delay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. Whether you're here in person and battled the rain a little bit, or you're online with over 100 others on Zoom, we're really glad you're here. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Katie Ellison. I'm a program manager with the Community Health and Partnerships team at Health Partners. And as a mom and a lifelong resident of the St. Croix Valley, this work is especially meaningful to me, and I'm really honored to be a part of the Little Moments Count team who brought this event to life today. So there's no doubt there's a lot of passion in this room for supporting children and families, and it's the shared commitment that makes Little Moments Count movement so special. We are united by the understanding that little moments, no matter how small, have the power to shape the future for our littlest ones. So in our household, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she's really into this podcast called Wow in the World. Anybody know that one? It's, yes, in the back. It's a science podcast. It's got great facts and stories about really interesting things. And it's meant for kids, but there's some lovely tidbits, I think, for adults as well. And sometimes as I think about Little Moments Count, we drop some of those really interesting facts about brain development. I can't help but think of wow in the world, like, wow. What? So if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm gonna kind of wow in the world some of the Little Moments Count stuff. So how it works in the podcast is there's Guy Raz and Mindy, and they have this sort of interview style back and forth. I'm not gonna do that, but as we all know, babies make about 1 million new brain connections every single second. That's bunker balls. That's their tagline. Their brains are like supercharged construction sites, neurons zooming around, connecting like wild. So picture this. If every one of those brain connections were a ping pong ball, a baby could fill an entire bounce house every second. Wow. So every silly song, peekaboo, every stinky diaper change, it all helps build that brilliant baby brain. It's wired to learn, and the first 3 years are when making the most connections it ever will. And really that reminds me that as adults, parents, caregivers, educators, neighbors, we get this incredible opportunity to help create the wow in a child's world, and hopefully have some wow rediscovered in our own world too. So today is particularly exciting because we are celebrating the 1-year milestone of Little Moments Count in the St. Croix Valley. We are proud to be a part of a growing community, over 115 partners, over 25 of whom are right here in the St. Croix Valley. Our collective efforts are laying the groundwork for success, and we're really excited to continue this work together. This past year has been one of valuable learning, listening, and connection building, and we're eager to build on that momentum to create meaningful impact for rural communities. So as we reflect on this past year, I want to say thank you for everyone here and online for really helping lay this foundation to build what we have so far, and to come with commitment and passion like you do every day. I also want to say a heartfelt thank you to the St. Croix Valley Foundation for their continued support through the First Thousand Days Fund. Their commitment to early childhood development has been instrumental for making all of this possible and ensuring the sustainability of this work. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Heather Logelin, President and CEO of the St. Croix Valley Foundation, who will kick off our event with the opening remarks.
Good morning, and I am honored representing the St. Croix Valley Foundation, the community foundation for this region, to welcome all of you in this room, and I understand about 150-ish people online, to today's conversation. I was thinking about this event over the past few days, and what came to mind, is there are people in this room who have chosen to do this work as a profession. And then there are the rest of us. So many of you, like me, first dipped your toes into early childhood work in a very personal way because you became a parent. And I was thinking yesterday about that moment when we left the hospital with our baby and thinking horrified, they're actually gonna let us take him home? And we are not qualified to do this. So maybe it's that personal experience that got me involved then, first with the Family Resource Center, St. Croix Valley. Marna's in the room, 20-ish years ago. I remember as an early board member asking Patty Draxler, I think, when I recognized that there were waiting lists for programs, and saying, so do you give priority to low-income families? And the response was very sweet. Heather, everyone is at risk for bad parenting. And that awareness that this work, this is not about income, this is about all of us learning to do something new and learning to do it well. And so 20 years ago, started to get involved in that work here in the Valley. Also had a chance to get involved with the United Way St. Croix Valley's Success by Six initiative early, a room full of people who were passionate. And honestly, at that point, we're just starting to maybe hear for the second or third time some of the Federal Reserve Bank's research on investments in early childhood. We're just starting to hear from Mark Tyler, who many of you in the room know, who was the unusual champion as the owner of OEM manufacturing for investments in early childhood, because he understood that this was a long play, that these early investments were about building brains, they were about building people, they were about building citizens and workers. And so this conversation that's been happening here in the Valley for long before I came to the Valley, it is so exciting now to be in a position at the St. Croix Valley Foundation where we were able, thanks to a couple, Bill and Rita Lawson here in the Valley, who believe in, understand, and value this work, and came to us one day and surprised me with a very large check saying, we want you to use this to invest in early childhood. And from that grew this first 1,000 Days grant program, and enabled us then to partner with our friends at Little Moments Count to say, you guys are doing it right. We're bringing people together. We're recognizing together we are stronger. We can do more if we're doing it kind of marching in the same path. And so bringing Little Moments Count to the Valley to continue that long history of investment in early childhood work. That is really, as a community foundation, what we are in a great position to do. One, to help connect donors and generosity with need and opportunity. And this really is an opportunity, right? We're investing, this is an opportunity to invest in little people and their caregivers and the systems and policies and environments in which they grow. So that connection, but also to bring people together through events like this, to bring people together to learn and hopefully to get inspired and to take action, either to continue doing the great things you're already doing, or maybe to start doing something different. And that really, in my mind, is the beauty of this Little Moments Count, because it's recognizing, yes, this is a big problem. This is about how do we create more accessible, affordable daycare. This is about how do we create more, there's a lot. And yet, as individual people in our daily lives, there are so many ways we can take action to take advantage of those opportunities and to make those little moments count. So with that, I am excited to turn the microphone over to my colleague and friend, Marna Canterbury, who is going to lead us through today's program and hopefully leaving here with a little bit of new information and a little bit of new inspiration. Thank you so much for being here. And Marna, thank you for your great leadership.
Well, thank you, Heather. You shared both from the professional and community world as well as our personal view, right? These connections we have with little ones and the connections we have with each other to support the little ones in our community. So I have the distinct pleasure of bringing up our very esteemed panel. and having a conversation with them, with you. And so I'm gonna welcome them, come up, and they are not telling me how they're sitting, so it's gonna be apple cutter set, and I'll introduce them just in a minute. I wanted to make a few remarks as we start out today, just reflecting on the conversations I've already had the privilege of having with our panelists. And I think we're gonna notice two things. There's really two almost polar forces when we talk about this topic. There is that joy and the wonder and the amazement of what a child in their first 1,000 days is, right, Katie? Wow, to quote Katie. Think for a moment about the last little infant you got to hold, see, touch, or if you're a parent, back on your own experiences, or as a grandparent or a friend or a loved one. Think about what that felt like, right? There's even a word for it, baby smell, right? Like we have words for this. That awe of looking at them and them being completely dependent on you, right? Just weight in your arms. And then on the other side of those feelings, you nailed it, Heather. Oh my goodness, what do I do? Yes, this little person is completely dependent on me. They're vulnerable, they're all of the things. And those two things exist together at the same time. I really was reflecting on this. My children are now fully capable adults. And yet, honestly, it was not that hard to remember those early feelings and the balance. So I'm going to share, just as an illustration of the importance of what we're talking about today, a little bit about my experience in becoming a mom for the second time. I still remember, I have 2 adult sons, and I still remember the joy of both of them being born. Come on, there's nothing like it, right? This feeling that, oh, I mean, you know, the cartoons when people lie down on railroad tracks, you know, the old cartoons, and there's this goofy thing. I remember having this active thought, 2 minutes. I'd known my first son for 2 minutes, and I actively had this thought, I would lay down on railroad tracks for them, like just out of nowhere, right? It's just this really powerful feeling. I also remember feeling overwhelmed and all the things. But when it came to the normal stress of parenting, that was a little different with my second son. I was on a long-term bed rest with my second son, and my parents, affectionately known as Papa and Nana, really were our circle, our community to get us through that, right? I've got a 3-year-old bouncing off the walls. I pretty much can't move, and I'm pregnant. So boy, that circle worked. It was just amazing, and it helped balance out the normal fear during that. But I also remember getting a call that with my mother on the other end of the phone, telling me that she had been diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And I was reflecting on what that felt like, kind of laying there, waiting for child 2 to arrive. And the only word I have today is that it felt like an earthquake. That everything, my support system, my mother, I mean, I'll cry if I share all the details. I'm just going to say earthquake. So everyone was there. We had lots of support to get through it. And when I reflect on the first 1,000 days of my youngest son's life, that ground was moving the whole time. And it was really hard. And then I thought about the wisdom I've heard from these panelists in our conversations. We have to recognize both. The world is difficult. We know that the ground is shaking for many parents and caregivers in our community. Who knows what's making their ground shake? But we have to have both. Like, how is that baby? How is that mom? How is that dad? How are they doing? It's both. It's an and question. And I'm not alone in understanding that ground shaking. If you don't know, less than a year ago, the Surgeon General of the United States published a report that called parent stress an urgent public health crisis. I'm a public health person. Usually we use those words for like COVID and opioids and heart disease. The parent stress, the shaking of the ground under our parents and families is an urgent public health crisis. And what Katie said, the potential is vast. So as we talk with the panel today, I'm just gonna set up, you're gonna hear both from them because we even had a good conversation. How do we balance these two things, right? The promise and the reality of all of this. So I'm gonna ask them questions, and the first one will be to let them introduce themselves a little bit more to you. But I'm just gonna go down so you know, if you can't tell from the pictures in your program, who you've got sitting here. All right, immediately here is Mary, and Mary is a parent, coach extraordinaire. She does a private consulting and she has so many wonderful stories to share. Next is Chris, and Chris is going to share from his psychotherapy perspective and his PhD dissertation from Yale. This one just stood out to me, is on mother-parent bonding. So I think maybe we'll be learning some things from him as well. Steve is next. He's our esteemed director of the United Way of St. Croix and Red Cedar Valleys in Wisconsin. Depth of experience in supporting communities in this space and a knowledge about some of the realistic economic and other challenges our families face. And last but not least, Tom is at the end, and he is both an ACE master facilitator. That means adverse childhood experiences. He'll talk more about that. And a pastor. So what a brilliant set of life and professional experiences they all bring to this. So there are no surprise questions right at the beginning for them. However, I want you to know that there is time for us to have a conversation here in this room and online. So there are index cards on your table. If you think of something, write it down, and later someone will come collect those and we'll direct those questions to the panel. And those 150 people online, you can do the same thing either in the chat or in the Q&A box on the screen. And we're sorry you're missing the hot coffee and the rain that's here today. Okay. So without further ado, let's turn to our panel. And I'm going to start with Mary next to me, and then we'll go down the line. Just to tell us a little bit about yourself and mostly your role in how you support parents and children in our communities.
Well, good morning. Can you hear me? There we go. Good morning. My name is Mary Gugesberg. It's an honor. I was thrilled to be invited, and it's an honor to be with you all, learn from you as much as I get to share what I know. I am the owner and founder of MKG Parent Coach, and that stands for helping and supporting parents, educators bring mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude into every parenting situation. Where do I begin, right? Because the early days of bringing that baby home and having that child, we know sleep is scarce. Sleep almost was a treasure at that stage, I remember. And there's that overwhelming feeling of getting it right, or almost feeling like I can do this all on my own. So when I'm blessed to hang out with families, I start with one question: who's there for you? Who is in your circle? And Marna already called out the Surgeon General's report from last year, Parents Under Pressure. And I'm just going to give a couple statistics from that. Nearly half of parents say they feel stress that is completely overwhelming every day. And they feel so stressed. 40% report back saying they feel so stressed, it's hard to function. So that's not just exhaustion, right? That's what Marna called out too. It's a public health concern. And we know how that ripples into our families, how that ripples into our homes. When a parent is isolated, feeling that stress, it's harder to show up with calm, patience, and be responsive. That's where I invite families to step into who's in your circle, who's there for you. That's when I created what I call the pause process, and it's being present, attentive, understand, support, and explore. We're going to talk a bit about the present and the support today, because parenting wasn't meant to be done alone. I was blessed. I'm a mom of two. My kids are also young adults. And I was blessed with a village. They really came along and held me. And that's my gift, is to be able to come alongside families and support them as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning. It's great to see everybody out here on such a beautiful spring day. Appreciate the effort to get here in person for sure. Yeah, my name is Chris Babbitt. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, both here in Wisconsin and in Minnesota. And I've been in the St. Croix Valley my whole career. So this feels very much like home. Psychology for me was always kind of an entryway into a world that always fascinated me, even as a kid. A lot of stories about that I could share, but obviously going into clinical psychology in particular, my entryway to children was working with them in the therapy office. So my career was really dominated by seeing children, adolescents, and of course their parents. And in the course of doing that work, it became pretty obvious fairly quickly that we were going to have to find a way to not only provide services to the child, but to be very sure to involve parents all the way through that process. And it's interesting that that was not always the case. When I was initially trained, parents were certainly part of the process, but they weren't really involved nearly as much as they got to be once my practice was growing and the field was changing. But being a student at the time, I was very interested in potentially going into psychiatry. But I learned very quickly once I got to college and began pre-med courses that probably wasn't going to be my area as I took on chemistry and calculus and all of that stuff. But I've always had a real interest in the biological side of things. And so I've always had this underpinning of interest in babies in particular and infant brain growth and things of that kind. And the links between that process of the baby's brain growing and attachment and bonding, which is how I really got started, at least in terms of doing a little bit of research way back in my career. So one of the things that people that know me will tell you, if I'm at a place where there's a baby in the room, my thinking is instantly what's going on in the brain of that little one. Quite aside from how incredibly dynamic and cute and interesting and fun they are to be around, there's that part of me that says, we really need to know more about what's actually happening in the brain. And as some of you have alluded to already, there's just been enormous progress in the area of brain scanning and imaging and that kind of stuff so that we can now look and see the difference between an infant brain in a more troubling situation where attachment is a question, as opposed to the more ideal outcome of a securely attached infant. The brains do look different. But one of the reasons Little Moments Count really jumped out at me as a great opportunity was the idea that sometimes parenting obviously can be very daunting. I've joked for years about writing a book, which I know I never will write, but called Parenting is an Impossible Job, which I really think it is. And we could talk a lot about that. But parenting is stressful by its nature. And as Marna referred to, when there are earthquakes around and the ground is unsteady and you're feeling a little off balance, parenting can be a really tough thing to do. But what you're going to hear a lot about today is that there are hundreds of opportunities in any given day for little moments. And even when you're stressed and overwhelmed, there are ways to carve out a minute or two, 5 minutes if you can, to do some of that work. So very happy to be here today and to kind of reach a confluence between my clinical background and some of my research interests and all of that to talk today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Earthquakes. So United Way, St. Croix and Red Cedar Valleys, Steve McCarthy, Executive Director. How did I get here? So I think back to my childhood. I grew up in a family where mom and dad were really focused on making a difference. So they were foster parents. And I had more foster brothers and sisters than I can remember. When I got a little bit older, some of them would share their stories. Eric, his dad murdered his mom and ended up burning the house down to try to cover up the body. That affects you. David, kind of a permanent foster brother. When I was 6 years old, he came to be my big brother forever. He was 8.5 years old. I don't remember this, but mom talked a little bit about that. He was covered with bruises and cuts and scrapes. He had a lot of earthquakes in his difficult childhood. I was just on a virtual visit with him last night. He's doing great in Florida, happily retired, doing really well. We were an Alice family growing up. We didn't have that concept. I'll talk about Alice a little bit more. Asset limited, income constrained, employed. I bring to the role a strong protective instinct for the Alice families out there and trying to make their lives easier. Households in life is stressful. If you're in an Alice household, that stress is never ending. You're worried about paying your bills at the end of the month. You're worried about your health. God forbid, if you get sick and can't work and you miss a shift and you don't get paid, how are you going to pay rent at the end of the month? How are you going to pay for food? How are you going to pay the $100 plus per month for diapers for the baby? So those are the stressors. We'll shine a bright light on Alice a little bit later on. But what does United Way do? The main thing we do is provide grants to our many nonprofit partners, some of whom are in here this morning. Without our nonprofit partners, we could not have the impact that we have. But we also provide diaper bank services in Polk County and Pierce County, here in the Valley, but also in the Red Cedar Valley now in Dent County. And just here in between the two counties in Polk and Pierce, we help between 60 and 70 kids per month make sure that they have diapers and wipes. We have 2-on-1 services. That's free confidential services. That's a helpline. If you're in a difficult situation, call 2-on-1. Our expert staff know the resources that are local to you. We'll get you connected. We also have the John Coughlin Hope Fund, and that provides emergency financial assistance. If you're one of those folks who you get sick and you're not going to be able to pay rent at the end of the month, you're going to have maybe a utility shut off because you haven't been able to pay that bill, call us. We can help. We can help. So that's what United Way does. We focus on Alice. I'll talk more about Alice later.
Thank you. I'm Tom Gonzalez. I am a master trainer for ACE Interface. I do have a slide. The original ACE studies looked at 10 childhood trauma sort of categories. We now know there's more than those. The original 10 are on the left. What drew me to this work was I score 9 out of the 10 on the left. I grew up in a home with an alcoholic dad. There was mental health issues. He was violent at times. My parents divorced and just on and on and on, right? And so I married my wife. Paul and I met in drug treatment. Sometimes people ask us, like, where'd you meet? And we're like, drug treatment. And they smile and they're like, oh, funny, really, where? And I'm like, no, it was drug treatment, you know? And Paula scores 10 out of 10. And by the way, I have permission to tell all the Paula stories that I tell as well, just so you know. But if people don't get anything else from what I present on, I wanted to hear this. Our trauma doesn't have to define us. An ACE score is not an indication of who we are or what we're going to become. It was meant to be a way to kind of quantify the amount of trauma that we had growing up as a kiddo, and then to be able to sort of explain and talk about that with others. That's all an ACE score was meant to do, right? So fast forward, I am at home. My 25-year-old son is in the dining room. I'm cooking us a little dinner, and on the table is an ACE score calculator. It's a little sheet that helps you figure out your ACE score, right? And I didn't even know he was looking at it. It was just laying around. And all of a sudden he said to me, hey, Dad, I'd scored 0 on this, wouldn't I? And I said to him, well, I mean, I can't answer for you if you felt like cared for and emotionally supported and loved growing up. But I mean, if you want to go with 0, I mean, I'm good with that, you know? And my point is, it's possible for a 9 aces and a 10 aces parental unit to pass down 0 to the next generation by their own estimation. I didn't tell him what his ACE score was. He told me what it was. And it was a billion little moments with people throughout the course of our lives that helped us when we were struggling and stressed, and sometimes spoke the truth in love to us, that got us to that score. So there is hope, right?
Thank you so, thank you so, thank you so much for, I'll just talk loud. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of insight into some of the ways that you have experienced and some of the perspectives you bring. You already mentioned, so I'm going to start with you, Chris, if that's okay. You already mentioned linking some of this to the concept of little moments. And so I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit more about that. a little bit more on how those little moments impact brain development in childhood, a little bit from your experience and expertise, and then we'll go down the line and come back to
Sure.
Mary. Thank
No,
you.
thank you. Thank you. As I mentioned, when I was in graduate school, I had the opportunity to do my internship at Yale, which was astonishing. But I took full advantage of it, as you might imagine, and stayed a second year to do my dissertation research, which, as Marta mentioned, was on mother-infant attachment and bonding, and in particular in the doctor's office during well baby visits. So myself and a trained rater tried to stand inconspicuously in a exam room, which was not easy to do. Both of us watched the well baby visit unfold, took notes about how the baby was behaving, how the caregiver was behaving in that moment. And as most of you probably are well aware, that some of the attachment behaviors, if you will, that we were looking at were things like gazing. Was the caregiver making eye contact with the baby? Was the baby looking at the caregiver? Was there touching happening? Were there vocalizations of various kinds happening? And of course, what's interesting is that when situations are stressed, like in a well baby exam, that stuff jumps out more clearly. So it was not necessarily difficult to do the work of observing, but what I found so fascinating was the variation in the way parents interacted. So there certainly wasn't a cookie cutter way to relate to your baby. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and many of which are probably equally effective in the sense of creating that kind of secure attachment moment. But what we've learned now in terms of looking at babies' brains is that every one of those interactions means something. It has a role to play. It directly impacts the growth of connectivity between various parts of the baby's brain. And as we've heard, it's really an explosion of activity that's happening in that tiny brain. And when you think about that, there's a couple of things I just wanted to mention quickly without being too long in the answer here. Over the years, we've put enormous pressure on mothers in particular to be responsible for their children's behavior down the road. So when I first began working, I went into schools quite a lot because the kids I was working with, of course, were in school. And in that environment, you would see this kind of thing unfold in an interesting way, that if there was a problem with the child, well, it clearly was something to do with mom, probably, maybe dad too, but more often mom was sort of the culprit. And that was obviously ridiculous. But nonetheless, we stuck to it for a long time. So I think mothers began to feel incredible pressure that if your third grader was acting up, well, it was something that you had done wrong. And of course, we know that's not true. We've come a long, long way since then. But I think ironically, the brain imaging research has kind of reinforced that in a way, because now we've said, look, we can see when your baby's brain is developing appropriately and when it's not. So I really want to be very careful not to get us back into a situation where we seem to be pointing fingers at parents rather than assisting them if they need it and supporting them in ways that we'll talk about some more today. And it's the reason why that attachment research was so important to me, because what I was observing were little moments. They were interactions that were occurring between mother and infant that took seconds, if that, and those things happening periodically during an encounter, like the well baby visit. So as I've said to you, I am endlessly fascinated with babies, and when I'm in public and there are babies around, I've never understood it, but they tend to latch on to me and to stare at me. In the grocery, I'll go buy a child in a grocery cart and they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm not sure that's a good thing necessarily, but I've always felt that link to the importance of what is happening in the brain of those children, and the ways in which we can influence that really simply by doing things like talking, reading, playing, singing. You've all heard those things, but it's so important to be able to do that. So I've been very lucky in the sense that I've been in a field where I've had the opportunity to see things grow. And now to be putting so much emphasis again on those little moments and getting away from the sort of blaming and shaming that I think we've done historically with parents is a huge advance, hoping that will continue.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and let's pass it down to Steve, and we're going to continue this really thinking about the little moments part of this. You'd already mentioned it as well, Steve. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, certainly. I'll talk about little moments, and I'll talk about the impediments to those little moments as well that we see in those Alice households. You know, I was just reflecting just a few minutes ago, Dr. Brian Kress, who I think many of you know. He was the doctor who brought my oldest daughter into the world 30 years ago. And so he is somebody who exudes kindness, compassion, gentleness. You just see this in people. And when my oldest daughter was born, my greatest fear was that I would not be a good dad. I was not entirely certain what that meant. But I kind of watched and looked around, who were the people that I admire? Brian is certainly one of those folks, others, and I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the vocabulary around little moments count, but I think instinctively you pick that up. Later in my career, I came across a discipline called gentle teaching. And it is something that was developed a few decades ago when researchers were bringing people with disabilities back into the communities from institutions. And in trying to do that, they realized how broken and damaged people were, and that the behaviorism techniques that they were trying just were not working. What they discovered was that people needed to first feel safe. They needed to feel loved. They needed to feel accepted. They needed to feel like they belonged. So that really is what we're trying to do as parents. If you have dogs in your household, you also know this too. They're always watching. They're prediction machines. Babies are prediction machines. If there's a dirty diaper, boy, they really would like that discomfort to go away. And so moms and dads have to pick up on those cues. That's a communication when they cry. That's a little moment that matters. If you ignore that, if you're in an Alice household and you have to ration diapers, one diaper at night, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, you are not able to meet the moment and you miss that opportunity. And so that's a tragedy when that happens. And that's why we have those diaper bank services in our 2 counties here. Alice households, they have housing insecurity. We've talked about that, the difficulties and the stressors around that, utilities, but just ongoing stressors. Thanks for putting that up there. If you look at Pierce and Burnett counties, 4 in 10 households are struggling financially, 4 in 10. Nobody should just say, oh, that's an interesting statistic. That's just not, it's not acceptable. If you dive deeper into the data, households with families, they're a little bit better off, maybe 1 in 3, some counties 1 in 4, but those are still way too high. It's much more difficult for those families, those adults, those caregivers to meet the moment. We have to do more to support them so that they can meet the moment.
Thank you so much, Steve. And thanks also for moving us into thinking about barriers, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But Tom, you have some really important perspectives to share on this idea of little moments from your multiple lenses.
For sure. So I'll tell you one of my favorite little moments with parents, if I'm talking to them and they've grown up in trauma. Number one, just looking at them and saying, it's not your fault. Right? There are noticeable differences in an architecture of a brain that grows up in trauma, and they didn't choose the environments that they grew up in or how their brain's wired biologically, right? And I'd like to give an example. When you hook up brain imaging scans, when parents who grew up in trauma hear their baby cry, the stress centers of their brains light up. right? They're having a stress response. And I don't know about you, but I tend not to like to hang out with things that cause me stress, right? I mean, it's a natural reaction, right? Versus parents who didn't grow up in trauma, the reward centers in their brains light up. They're already anticipating meeting their baby's needs and having a closer bond because of that. And they feel already warm and fuzzy inside, right? I was telling my wife this when I learned this. I was doing this online course in brain development and trauma, and we were at Emily, Minnesota. Anybody know Emily up north, right? It was Emily days. We were literally watching the Elvis impersonator on stage, eating our burger. Do you know what I mean? And so I was telling her, hey, here's what I learned today. And her knee-jerk reaction to that was, I always knew I was different than the other moms. And then a tear came in her eyes. Right. And then she said, I wonder if it'll happen with our grandbaby as well, when we have grandkids someday. And she knew she was different than the other moms. And so, as we've already heard, what does she think about herself? She's worse. She's not as good as. And once she understood that this wasn't her fault, now we can talk about, great, the next time that happens, you now know it's a biological response and you have choices to make some different decisions. And let's talk about those things. So it's little moments like that that I love.
Tom, thank you so much. And Mary, I know you have some methods and some important ways of approaching this
Most
with your
definitely.
family.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys are touching my heart so much. Wow. I like the idea of that we all have that image that maybe it was just me, but I'm pretty sure from all the parents I work with, that myth that I'm going to be the perfect mom. I'm going to be the perfect parent. And what I encourage my clients, what I encourage all parents is just be there. That's what our kids need. Presence is practicing the pause and just catch your breath, be present. It makes me think of a story. So I had this client who reached out. They have 4 kids, age 7 down to a newborn. And when the newborn came in home, the 7-year-old really started behavioral issues, big time. It's fighting with the sibling number 2. So they reached out and we started doing coaching, and they scheduled their coaching during child number 3, who was a toddler, nap time, and mom is nursing, literally on the screen nursing, and the 2 olders are playing somewhere in the house. Now, what I neglected to tell you is that this is a family who were together 24/7. Mom was homeschooling the 2 olders, all of them. So chaos and teaching and trying to mom and be a mom to an infant. We know the sleep deprivation, and dad worked from home. They were all together all day long. A lot of conflict, a lot of trying to do the perfect parent. And again, mom is nursing, dad's got half of an eye on watching the 2 older siblings, toddlers napping. So when we practiced the pause, we started with naming family values, that foundation. What do I want in these kiddos before they fly from our nest? And they took this really serious. They came up with love, respect, connection. And then they figured out a way to, yes, 4 kids, find many moments, those little moments of connecting one-on-one with each kiddo. We could put the toddler in the stroller and I'm carrying the infant, and now we're going for a walk with the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old. I'm watching them on the playground, having those moments. And then I always call out co-parents. How are you finding time for each other? Not just the good night, I love you. We made it another day, but literally finding those moments to connect. So once they named their values and found that time, the next thing we walked into, and this is the A, the attentive, is naming your own emotions so that you can help your kiddos name theirs, that validating. Dad was the biggest success in this one. So many men are raised that stuff it down. We can't show our emotion. We got to have that armor. We're always going to be strong. Well, as soon as this dad started to let it down and be like, this is what I'm feeling. I need to catch my breath. Mom's here. I'm just going to do my breaths. I'm going to name what I'm feeling so that I could tame it. The kids were starting to see too. He was getting himself regulated, and now the kids have that model of how can I self-regulate? And mind you, they're very little. And then the last part in this is they worked really hard to realize that I don't have to do this alone. I have a supportive circle. And It's challenging to let people know we don't have it all figured out. But we don't have it all figured out, and there's support persons out there. So I have to call out, this family was wonderful. The change didn't happen overnight. They don't pop up on their own, right? It's that growth that happens through all of us. Their house did become calmer. The sibling rivalry, it calmed down because the kids were learning ways to witness mom and dad naming what they needed as well. It's a pretty fun story.
Thank you so much, everyone. You really make this idea of little moments come to life. I wonder, Tom, if you'd start us out on this next question, and I just want to add to it a little bit. We're talking about those two poles, right? The magic of the little moments, the potential of infant brains in those first 1,000 days, and the parent stress, right? So Mary, you hit on a couple of things that I think are important. I'm going to go back to my own story and remembering, like, support can come in funny ways for a parent, like a hospice nurse. I can still see the hospice nurse, right? Who's helping my mother, but helping us and helping me, or that unexpected neighbor you never knew who kind of gets what's going on, right? Or the friend of a friend. So that support can come from all kinds of different places, and how essential that is to help, in my case, that mom figure out how to move forward and still feel like you're doing the best you can with what you have in the little moments. But those are some of the barriers. And Tom, I know you have some really important storytelling around barriers and how those community supports matter, or other supports.
Sorry, I'm feeling like, wait, what are we talking about now? Can you just give that to me again a different way?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about barriers to parents being able to do the little moments count, and a little bit more on the ACEs work that you've been so deep in.
For sure. So when we grow up in trauma, obviously we get stuck. Okay, give me one Bible verse. All right, I'm a pastor. I don't usually talk about that a lot in this crowd. You know, I don't even say the P word a lot of times because people just get freaked out, right? Okay, but I will give you one Bible verse. Okay, you ready? And it is, do not conform to the patterns of this world any longer, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind, right? When we grow up in trauma, we grow up in a pattern that we conform to. And so if you're familiar with, let's say, the anatomy of a dysfunctional family, for example, you have the identified patient, the person with the problem. It might be the alcoholic or the workaholic or something like that. Often they're married to somebody who's codependent, who is obsessively, compulsively trying to control and fix. The addict alcoholic uses to escape pain and avoid reality. The codependent person controls to escape pain and avoid reality. If I can keep my eyes on you, who are habitually in a state of needing to be fixed, then I don't have to deal with myself, right? And there's a little high that comes from helping. And so you feel good about that. Kiddos often take on certain roles. Doesn't have to be birth order, but it oftentimes is. Firstborn tends to be the hero. They're the good kid, does what's right, that sort of stuff, does the dishes, gets their brothers and sisters off to school, that sort of thing. Why do they do it? To escape pain and avoid reality. If I get everything taken care of, then maybe mom and dad don't fight and there's no issues, and then I don't get hurt, right? Second kid, middle child, middle kids out there, my people, yes. It's almost like they say, wait, you're the goody two shoes? I will go to the dark side. And it is like drinking, drugs, truancy, all those things, okay? They are doing it to escape pain and avoid reality, but they're just letting it all out in destructive ways, not in constructive ways. Third child, lonely child, they disappear. They can disappear in a crowd even. Sometimes people are like, wait, you got another brother or sister? What? You know, avid fiction readers, fantasy watchers, video game players, they escape off into their little world. Why? Escape pain and avoid reality. It's safer over there. I don't have to deal with. And then finally, the mascot. That's the kid everybody loves. They can hang with the skaters one day, the jocks the next, the druggies the day after that. If I act like you, talk like you, think like you, then you accept me. I don't get hurt. right? Okay, so here's this whole family system, everybody hurting, trying to get around that pain in ways that don't actually get rid of any of the pain and just bring more pain to the party. Now, here's the thing. When someone decides to break out of that system, what does the system do? Drags them back in. You have to fulfill your role in our dysfunctionally balanced system, right? A hero, for example, oftentimes gets a good job, vice president, lives near mom and dad, takes care of them, manages their bills, mows their lawn, all the things, right? They announce, usually it happens in their 50s, maybe 60s. That's it. I'm done taking care of mom and dad all the time. It's time for some of you to do it. And the brothers and sisters, they're not like, oh, we're so glad you finally decided to set healthy boundaries in your life. Like, way to go, right? What do they say? No, you have to do it. Like, mom and dad trust you. They don't like us, that sort of stuff, right? And what do mom and dad say? No, you have to do it. Like, your brother, he's drug addict. He can't even take care of his own bills. And your sister's always got her head in the clouds. She's never around, right? Like, and so everybody tries to get that system back into place. Enter us with the degrees and the learnings and the trainings. And we're like, well, here's what you have to do, right? You just make different decisions and then you get out. And we don't realize sometimes those mechanisms behind what's keeping people glued to where they're at, right? If you want to break out of those kinds of systems, and this is out of a book called Bridges Out of Poverty, probably more of you know better than I do, but it is in order to break out of from one system to another. Well, I don't care if it's poverty to middle class or relational poverty to better relationship. We need two things: a mentor, someone who can tell us and help us get to that next stage and what that's like and what those rules are like, because we don't know how to navigate that. And we need enough grit to get through the uncomfortable learning period, right? So there's definitely those barriers in place.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve, if you want to add to what you were starting to say about Alice, if there's other barriers you want to identify.
Yeah, sure. I think the first Alice I'll talk about is my mom. Mom was Alice. I just have vivid memories of being in the living room. Hey, mom, come play with me, or come read a book to me. And she's in the kitchen, drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes and writing checks, paying the bills. Watch TV. I'll be in there in a little while. She was full of love, but she had moments where the stress would just overcome her ability to be the parent that she wanted to be. And I just remember her that they're just going to have to wait. They're just going to have to wait. I'll pay a little bit this month. They're just going to have to wait until next month. That is the reality for our Alice households that United Way supports. That those stressors are never ending. It's a weight that you're carrying around with you all day long. It's hard when you have that kind of weight to get past it, to meet the moment, to be in that space where that little moments count, to look at your child with just a genuine, loving gaze. All of the pressures that you're feeling to get your family through another week, through another month, it can just be overwhelming sometimes. And so we get those calls. We've got staff who are really well trained to be a very calming voice when we get stress calls with our 211 services. Our nonprofit partners who are Family Resource Center, we've got a couple of leaders here today. They're in that space all day long, and they know it. They see it. If you look at the data from our 211, yeah, housing is the one that comes up all the time. Paying those utility bills comes up all the time. Medical debt is a growing problem. That comes up increasingly. Transportation barriers, that's a real issue for our families. And so I just think about how are we going to, as a community in the St. Croix Valley, meet the moment for our Alice families. I really worry about that. I look at the data for Alice that goes back to 2010 when United Way first started this Alice concept. The data, it just kept going up, but it started to go down before COVID. And now in COVID and coming out, it has shot right back up. And the trajectory, those trends are continuing to go up. The federal poverty level has been pretty stable. but it's those Alice households that we really are deeply worried about. And so those are the barriers. And I'll stop talking and pass the mic here.
I'm gonna just interject here to be sure that folks in the room, if you have questions, let's start bringing them up because we're gonna shift over to your questions with the panel in just a moment. So if you have questions, someone is going to be coming around and picking those up, and then online, go ahead and start bringing those up now as they come in online or in the room, because we're just going to do another quick couple answers here and then go to your questions. So a challenge for both Chris and Mary. Can you add with like a short answer, anything else to the barriers conversation while we await those questions from the team here?
Barriers. Just the word itself makes you go, ugh, right? So when I think of the first 1,000 days, I go back to myself right away with sleep deprivation. The financial strain, you talk so well about that, but childcare is expensive. And I remember my husband and I even toying if we could afford a second child when we had baby number 2. And then back to that myth that I talked about last time that, well, it's just innate. I should just have this all figured out. I can be the perfect parent. I'll be the parent my parents weren't. I remember thinking that a lot. And we know when that stress gets heavy, everything feels impossible. My kiddo's melting down at just the wrong time when I'm like already at the end of my fuse. My baby isn't sleeping. And why isn't my baby sleeping? And what can I do? You try everything. Did anybody do this? Like, well, last night they slept, so we'll bathe them the same way. We'll swaddle them the same way. We'll warm the bed the same way. I remember putting a heating pad in the crib so the crib was warm. So I take her from me nice and warm and put her in the crib. It just, the stress, it's never ending, right? So when we feel stress, that's when we disconnect. We disconnect from ourselves, we disconnect from our kids, we disconnect from our co-parents, our partners. And I'm back to that the one thing, all our kids need is for us to be there, just to show up. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. And kids don't come with instructions, they just need us. And being present, I start each of my things. Remember I said MKG, it's mindfulness, kindness, gratitude. I start each of my coaching calls with a mindfulness practice. I give parents tools that they can use for themselves and then teach their children. So I invite all of us in the room to think about how are you modeling being present also? We're a society of armoring up. I got this all figured out. I don't need anyone else. I can do this. When really, let your guard down and let people know, especially when our kids see us asking for help, they know they can ask for help. Well, mom is asking the neighbor to help us right now, literally helping us mow our lawn. Our lawnmower is not working. Well, we don't need to worry about it today, but our lawnmower is gone and we need help, asking for help. And then that opportunity to, instead of pretending that I have it all together, to really say, I can't do this alone. We're not meant to do it alone. A very fast story, because in the letter, the pause is the letter P, P-A-U-S-E, this S is support. And I'm coaching a group up in New Richmond, and they have toddlers all the way through elementary school. And we talked about who's in your circle, mapping that out. And these parents are like, Mary, it's so hard as an adult to make friends. I'm new to this community. I can't make friends. And as soon as we started peeling the layers back, they're like, well, my coworker loaned me their car. This person said they would watch my older child so I could go to my younger child's a doctor's appointment. I mean, the light bulb turns on and they do have a circle of support. It's the neighbor who you didn't know was right there watching all this, coming over with a hot dish, right? And it's giving that opportunity to shift from the armoring up, right? The superhero, to just being present, opening up and saying, I'm willing to let you in because we need to.
Mary, thank you so much. And Chris, if it's okay with you, I'm going to add to the question that I'd like you to think about. Of course, to add to that concept of barriers, But one of the questions from the group here is about the little moments. Do they count more or differently when done between a parent and a child? Or between a child and someone else, like a daycare worker, a grandparent, or another adult? And I'm
Yeah.
giving you a tough thing weaving together, but I know you can do
Well,
it.
that's a great question. Yeah, I think one of the things that makes me feel optimistic about this whole area that we're talking about is just that point. It's certainly true. We're going to focus and have been focusing on those little moments with your infant or your little child. But it is literally never too late to change the way you relate to your child, almost regardless of what age they might happen to be. This kind of stuff, even though it sounds almost intuitive, like it's an automatic thing that we would just do this, most parents, of course, don't automatically have those skills, even those of us that are trained in psychology, like myself. Brief story. My wife and I have just one daughter. She's now 33, gulp, and living in Chicago. But when she was born, Marna's story reminded me of this, that my wife was on bed rest for a few months because Tess was saying, I want out of here. I don't want to stay the whole time I'm supposed to. And so we went through a long period of my wife having to lie on her left side in bed and get terbutaline shots periodically during the day, which I would give to her. And then the delivery was difficult. Tess was born with an Apgar 1. Certainly had all of us in the delivery room kind of going, oh boy, this is not good. She did not feed well. She never latched on to breastfeeding. Lost a little weight after she was born, and she was already pretty small. And there was a situation where my wife and I are both trained mental health professionals. We have an intact marriage. We're doing reasonably well financially. Thank God we're not in the position of an Alice family. And we were every bit as flummoxed and anxious and concerned about how we were going to handle this very needy little girl. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so impressed with Family Resource Center. I know several Family Resource Center folks are here today, but I really think that the services that they offer with their Welcome Baby program, which is going into hospitals, talking to new moms and dads about their babies and what services are out there, that's something that should be universal. My wife and I really needed that. It would have been very helpful to us to have somebody around who could say, okay, let's take some deep breaths. Let's look at what's going on. Here's what we can do to do some basic education. So sometimes the barriers are there kind of by neglect, in a sense, in that we're just not doing some of the things that, at least in theory, we could do to bolster parents and help them feel more confident. So it's great that nowadays we have so many different potential vehicles to do that.
Thank you so much. Well, as our time gets close to move on to the rest of the program, I'm gonna try a rapid fire answer on a specific question, and then we're gonna close. So 30 seconds. If you have something to add, panel, how would you say that screen time or social media is impacting little moments in the first 1,000 days? What advice do you have? Rapid fire, 30 seconds. I'm looking at Mary because I knew she had something to say about this earlier.
Oh, that's the reason parents call me the most, is I've lost my child to this. And it's never, never, never too late. You called it out. It is never too late to work with your child, come up with a plan. I have a whole, a tech plan. You walk through it, you practice the pause, right? Being present, attentive, their emotions, my emotions, listen to understand. Validate your kiddo. Like, yeah, this breaking away, we talked about this, putting that device away they hook us. It is how it's just written in holding on to us. Those algorithms can't understand them, but they are so hard to put it away. It's having the opportunity to model. How am I modeling? Where is my device? How am I separating? And having the opportunity to say, there's a time, is it a toy or is it a tool? And really stepping into building that as a family, explore those solutions together.
Thank you, Mary. So I'm gonna pass the mic back down to Tom, and while they were prepared for this last question, I'm not giving them very much time to answer it. So, but Tom, I want to start with you, really, our closing question for the panel is what advice you have to make the little moments count, and I know you had some personal reflections on that.
For sure. Whenever we talk trauma, people are always like, want the silver bullet. What should we do? Give us the 3 quick hits or something like that. And so relationship builds brain by far more than anything else, right? It's caring, competent relationships that can mediate stress so that even if Johnny's in a 10 aces environment, a few caring, competent relationships can by far counteract that, right? So I was 21 and I was done. I was gonna check out of life. I was a drug addict, alcoholic, and the pain was just constant. And as I was about to end my life through a series of events, I ended up in the emergency room instead. And the admitting nurse for ER, I said, I have a drug problem. I want to go up to the 4th floor. It's the chrysalis unit, right? For 30-day inpatient treatment. This was, years ago. And she gets on the phone and kind of talks to him for a minute and says, well, they don't have beds available up on the 4th floor. We'll check you to the hospital through K1 and then we'll transfer you upstairs. Would that be okay? No, that would not be okay. Everybody who lived in Sheboygan at that point knew what K1 was. Psych ward. I looked at her and said, I am not crazy. When you have a bed, call me. I had not filled out any paperwork yet. This was long before cell phones. We didn't even have an answering machine, if you know what those are, And I started to walk out. She didn't even know my name. And so she gets back on the phone and she's like, wait a minute. I don't hear the conversation. I imagine it went something like this. Take him, right? He's leaving. And she said, all right, they'll take you upstairs. Great, thanks. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So I check in for 30-day inpatient treatment, stay the 30 days. I've been clean ever since. If I make it to December 7th of this year, it'll be 37 years, right? I mean, thank you, that's fine. But it's relationship, right? So about 15 years ago, I got the transcripts from the hospital because I was trying to figure out, I've never talked to this nurse again, never saw her. Wouldn't it be great if I could just look her up and say like, hey, thank you so much. She was not listed anywhere. So I'm cleverly enough call her the no-name nurse, right? A 5-minute interaction with the no-name nurse who is caring and competent enough in that moment got me to where I needed to be and changed the whole course of my life. You want to know what to do? Be caring and competent in the lives of people that are in your sphere of influence. That by far is more powerful than anything.
I'm gonna ask that we thank the panel. I could listen to them forever. I actually have way more questions to ask, and we have others that we're gonna welcome. But I can't tell you how much I've learned from all of you, and I would expect there's gonna be folks wanting to talk to you after this because there's so much more that you could be saying and offering. Thank you for your time and your preparation. Can we give them a hand? That was amazing. And if you'd heard all the other answers that we didn't have time to get to, we'll just have to do this again, maybe next year, same place, same panel. All right. Well, I hope that you all learned from that, as I did from talking with them today and in advance, that it's adults can show up, and that how we show up, whether it's as a professional or a parent or a loved one, matters a lot in a child's life. But now we want to take just a moment and really shine some light on amazing work that's happening here in the St. Croix Valley with some of our partners. These are examples of what it looks like when we invest in families early. These are examples of what it looks like when organizations work together and collaborate from the very beginning. So first, I want to welcome up Marla Butler from the Family Resource Center, St. Croix Valley. She's going to tell us more about the meaningful ways they're connecting families. The work they do is exceptional, and I can hardly wait to hear from her. And it's the Welcome Baby program.
Good morning. I'm Marla Butler, Program Manager at Family Resource Center, St. Croix Valley. I'm excited to be here with you today. At Family Resource Center, St. Croix Valley, our mission is simple but powerful: to strengthen children, families, and communities by providing education, resources, and support. We serve families in Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix counties, supporting those from prenatal stages to kindergarten entry, and all of our programs are offered completely free of charge. Today, I'm here to share one of our cornerstone initiatives, our Welcome Baby program, and the partnerships we have throughout the 3-county service area. Welcome Baby started in 2007 with the support of United Way Success by 6. We started small with just 2 hospitals, and we have grown the program over the years. Today, we partner with Amory Hospital and Clinic, Osceola Medical Center, Western Wisconsin Health, Westfields Hospital and Clinic. In 2024, parent educators met with 548 families. This was an increase from 2023, when we met with 425 families. At each of these visits, a parent educator meets with all new parents to share a wealth of information, including newborn development milestones, the importance of talking, reading, and singing, Family Resource Center programs and services, community resources tailored to the family's needs, and education of period of purple crying. Here's a look at the Welcome Baby bag and the items that are provided. I actually have one here you can look at afterwards. One parent shared how learning about period of purple crying helped ease their anxiety during those tough moments of uncontrollable crying. They felt reassured knowing this was normal, and sometimes there's nothing a parent can do to stop it, and that's okay. All parents are invited to Family Resource Center programs, specifically Baby and Me. Baby and Me is a play discussion hour, parents and their babies. Over the years, there have been many long-term friendships that have developed in Baby and Me. As a longtime team member at Family Resource Center, I have been able to watch families grow and thrive through the social connections that have been made. As some of these families now have children entering high school, their friendships have continued. And it all started with an invite when we met them at Welcome Baby. A deeper dive into the Welcome Baby bag. One key item in the Welcome Baby bag is a handout from our Parents as Teachers home visiting curriculum. Ways to build attachment with your baby. We emphasize the crucial message that you cannot spoil your baby in the first 6 months of life. This is shared during the one-on-one visit with each caregiver present. Another Parents as Teachers handout is shared is a small snippet of newborn milestones. Notice 1 to 2 milestones for each area of development that provides ideas of how parents can help their baby grow. Period of purple crying. Oh, there we go. Period of purple crying. This is the vital part of the Welcome Baby visit. Every family receives a period of purple crying booklet that has an app code to download as a useful tool to keep track of breastfeeding, crying, sleeping, and even diapering. This app also provides tools to assist with crying, soothing, coping, and sleeping and self-care. We've talked about that sleeping a lot. During a visit with the parent educator, they review what each letter in the word purple stands for. The period of purple crying has a crying curve that starts at about 2 weeks and peaks between 8 and 12 weeks, then decreases and resolves by the time the baby is about 6 months old. This also provides the opportunity to remind parents that it is okay to put your baby down and give yourself a break, and there's nothing wrong with you as the parent or with the baby. If this is not the family's first child, a parent educator may ask what they remember about previous experiences and go into deeper detail. Welcome baby visits are more than information. They're about connection. We ask parents what they are most excited for and if they have any concerns. Our programming is reviewed during this visit with the family. And if the family is feeling they would like more one-on-one support, parents as teachers home visiting is offered. This is an opportunity for a parent educator to come to the home 2 times a month and provide parent-child activities, child development information, child development screeners, and the access to many resources and support networks. Families ideally stay in parents as teachers for a minimum of 2 years. Recently, there have been a few families that a parent educator met with at the hospital. And in the meeting, the family had no concerns. But after a few weeks home, questions started to arise. Postpartum depression started to set in. The families followed up with their medical provider and their team, and they were reminded of Family Resource Center. The team would make a referral to Family Resource Center, and we were able to do another follow-up. In one case, it was one-time visit to the home to provide more education and resources. In other cases, it's a deeper discussion and the family is enrolled in parents as teachers home visiting. Over the years, we have enrolled many families into parents as teachers home visiting from meeting at a welcome baby visit. It is amazing to see these families grow from being afraid to go out with their baby to becoming key members of group connections such as Play and Learn. Soon you will hear from one of our participants, although we did not meet her at Welcome Baby, but she has great things to say. So thank you for hearing this, and I will be out there later for any questions.
Marla, thank you so much. And given that it's been a long time since I had a baby, did anyone else not know about purple crying? Okay, oh, where were you? Okay, that's really, really important. I might need your handout for the young people in our lives who are going through this. That's that real practical application of how to show up for both ends of this, the needs of that child, the needs of yourself. I knew I'd learn a lot today, but I'm just learning even more. We have so many wonderful partners in the community who are doing this kind of work. So another great example is our friends Jenny and Jody from the Stillwater Early Child Family Education Center. They're going to tell us more about their secure attachments class, which I'm also intensely curious about. So there you go, Jenny.
Thank you. We actually offer the Period of Purple Crying course for free through our program too, once a month. We call it something different now on there because people didn't know what Period of Purple Crying was. So we had to come up with a different thing, but that is free for anybody in the community as well, and huge change for people to get that information. I'm Jenny Hanlon. I am a parent, child, and family educator. This is Jody Kinney, our fantastic school psychologist for our early childhood program. We want to thank the panel because you reaffirmed everything that we're sharing in our classes. So thank you, especially the research and building relationships and all of that. As we already heard, attachment is such a big piece in how children development or how children develop. And because of that base, we know that infants and young children need that consistent, responsive relationship with at least one person to thrive and develop. And children who have a history of secure attachment demonstrate fewer behavior problems and more empathy as compared to those who are classified as securely attached. As you mentioned, we know the brains look different when that's happening. Within our program, sorry, there's a lot of echo with this. We have the privilege of working really closely and supporting both parents and kids together.
So I came across a study that talked about, this was just done in 2014. That it was a study with 14,000 children in the US. And what they found was that 40% lack strong emotional bonds. So what psychologists would call an insecure attachment. We know that you're going to become attached to your primary caregiver. It's either going to be a secure attachment or insecure. And there are brain differences, right? And outcomes for kids with secure versus insecure attachments, and that carries into their relationships as adults and how they parent as well. Like we already talked about, nothing is ever set in stone, but what we know is that the attachment pattern that you establish with your primary caregiver, you're more likely to bring that into your own parenting as well. Part of our impetus for starting this class was just realizing how important secure attachments are. And that, you know, when I went to look at some common parenting websites and I type in secure attachment, right? Like, how are parents getting this information? A lot of the things that were popping up was what to do when your child is, you know, attached to their pacifier. And I'm like, oh no, that's not what I'm looking for. We started this class to just really talk about little moments, because that's really what helps build secure attachment, and this idea of intentionality. It's really easy to get caught up in the angst of parenting, the angst of the pace of our life. And so we really focus on that relationship piece and intentionality in our class. Oh, okay. So part of our class is, I mean, we really, it's a 7-week class. We started it as being an 8-week class, and we've condensed it down to 7. But we really spend time with parents who are expecting a baby, or who have just recently had their baby. And the emphasis is on talking about what secure attachment is, what's the alternative to a secure attachment, how do you go about getting a secure attachment with your baby. And we also really talk about, we spent one whole class on perinatal mood disorders and bringing about awareness to postpartum depression, anxiety, the stats around that, and again, how to get help. And we also really have a focus on community resources in our classes as well. We do know that parental mental health impacts children's mental health, right? If you are caught up in angst or depression, it makes it a lot harder to cue in on your baby's signals that they're giving you. And we know that secure attachment is really about trying to be responsive to those cues of our babies and providing a sense of safety. And so if we are dealing with our own mental health, that can really impact our ability to be consistent in our responses. And so we just really want to help take away the stigma around mental health. And so we spent some time on this as well.
Approximately 16% of children under 6 years old experience clinically significant health problems, often presenting dysregulated emotional and behavioral problems. And we are definitely seeing this within our program lead. And so this was also kind of a call to action of what can we be doing ahead of time. You know, so often our work is more the reactive response, and this is looking at more of the proactive response. Let me just flip to the next one here. So in our 7 weeks, we're really bringing awareness to the importance of a secure parent-child attachment, supporting the understanding of how parental mental health and action impacts the attachment relationship, and then just building a community of support within the parents, and just that mental health piece. Again, it's such a big piece, and we know that it's going to be varied and so much harder if there's also financial struggles and food insecurity on top of that, and that's where our community resources really comes into play. Another factor that I don't think we mentioned is that we have been able to provide this for free for families because of grants supported by the St. Croix Valley Foundation. We didn't realize we could apply again, so we were like, we had to get some funding for the next time, so we did get it through another organization for the next time, but we will not forget that this is an option, because we definitely want to be able to continue to provide this for free.
Yeah, we've also offered the class both in person and virtual, so really doing what we can to try to reduce some of those barriers. So we do a kind of a pre-test and then a post-test at our first and last class. And one of our questions is, how familiar are you with this concept of secure attachment? And it's like a 5-point Likert scale. And in 100% of our participants, we've run 7 sessions now, I think 7, of this class since we started last April, right? Has it been 2 years now?
5,
I don't know.
5, we're going on 6.
Okay,
6.
6 classes. So 7 total. By the end of 2025, we'll have offered 7 classes or sessions. But 100% of our participants have said they have learned and are more familiar. And in fact, if we really break it down, at least 80% have made a two-point jump in what they're saying they feel that they know about secure attachment. Okay, so now we just have some quotes. They also have a chance on the post test to just write some things. And so one participant said, I think both of us, and this is also really cool because a lot of couples are attending. It's not just the mom. We've had a handful of just moms attend, but for the most part, it's been couples who are attending. It's really awesome. I think both of us came into this class with a lot of anxiety about the parenting we saw growing up and patterns, behaviors we would repeat. So we are both very grateful for the knowledge and resources that were shared to give us confidence for the new journey ahead of us. Oh, and something else I just want to say too, when we talk about that support too, after the class is over, we follow up with the parents for the first 3 months of their baby's life. So if they're coming and the baby hasn't been born yet, we have the due dates. And so we start checking in with them via either an email typically or a phone call. So Jenny or I will try to check in about the 2-week mark, like the 6 to 8 week mark, and then again around the 10 to 12 week mark.
We have one due today, so we have to check in. I've had this date on my calendar, so there was a little bit of a break in there. This class was very helpful and provided lots of valuable information. I found the content helpful and applicable to our newborn as we were starting to see and recognize cues. So the concept of secure attachment and serve and return was something that we could put into practice immediately. We also found the information about community resources to be extremely helpful. As we've gone through this, we have extended it where those that have already welcomed their newborn could join in if they didn't know about the class prior to that. So I think we've had someone all the way up to maybe 3 months old.
Yeah, we've also had parents who are not just first-time parents, but maybe they're welcoming their second child who are attending, which is really cool too, because we talk about like, it's never too late, right? So if they're like, oh, I wish I would have known this, or we had one couple who the mom was very honest and said, I really struggled with postpartum depression and I didn't get help for a while. And so she kind of felt like that first year was lost and now they were trying to make up for it and they were getting ready for their second baby. And so that's really something too that we talk about, is that it's not about doing this perfectly. We really talk about giving yourself grace. Again, we just keep talking about mental health throughout, but just that idea that yes, these are the things that we know, but 1 year old isn't too late to start being intentional and having these little moments, right? Another quote, coming into the class, I felt very daunted by becoming a parent. Now I feel much more prepared for the first few years and also understand the extreme importance of these years. We've been sharing this class with our friends as we found it very valuable.
Enjoyed the class. As a future new parent, I got a lot of knowledge in a pretty short time span and feel more confident knowing all the ups and downs that can occur and all the resources to deal with common situations. It was hard to pick which quotes. So sorry. This has been something that wasn't expected, but a wonderful thing is 82% of the families who've taken part in the secure attachments class have continued to stay involved in our program. Or some sort of ACFE program. Some people aren't necessarily living within the boundaries of our school district, and so they might take part in another one. And just the community that has formed through that has been pretty cool. We had such a long wait list for our new parent connection class that is also free in September that we added one very last minute within a week. It was filled up. And that class consistently Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. 15 babies have come, and every baby in there happens to have two caregivers, and they've been coming with their two caregivers. It's been a very full room full of so much support and so much community. Our daytime one continues to be thriving as well. This summer, we have 2 evening ones, 15 babies in each one. And so we just are very grateful to kind of have this springboard and to be able to support these families in a hard time when you're adjusting to sleep and hormones and all the things. So thank you to the St. Croix Valley Foundation for supporting this and really giving the push for us and for all of you for being here.
So the expertise in the room just keeps growing, and so does the sense of community. I'm just so struck by those two things about how much knowledge base there is among those who are coming alongside our families, the expertise, the commitment, and also just all of the impact of this work. And so speaking of impact, we're gonna shift to the impact on real people. We are just so pleased to welcome Kelly Davis up. Kelly has been impacted by the programs that Marla was speaking about from the Family Resource Center St. Croix Valley. That includes both home visiting and recovering cafes. Kelly is here to reflect on her own lived experience with this. We're just so glad to hear her personal experience. Thanks, Kelly.
Good morning, my name is Kelly and I'm honored to be sharing my story with you today. Thank you for inviting me to share. Some of you may have heard me speak at the Family Resource Center St. Croix Valley's Reach for the Stars Gala last month. Standing here, I am reminded of just how much the Family Resource Center St. Croix Valley has meant to my family and to me. It is not an exaggeration to say that their support has been transformative. Today, I'd like to share my story of connection, growth, and hope. I honestly don't have a lot of memories of my childhood as I had been through a lot of trauma. My mom was the sole provider of me and my brother. My dad was an alcoholic. We all lived in an abusive household until he completely left our life when I was 11. I remember life being chaotic and stressful. We moved quite a bit. My mom worked very hard, a lot of overtime, which unfortunately meant she wasn't home much. I started smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol at the age of 12. My brother, who is 3 years older than me, was selling drugs. My mom didn't know what to do, so this behavior continued through high school. We found out my mom had breast cancer when I was 17. I barely graduated high school and dropped out of college after 1 semester. I lived with my mom and her significant other about a year before she passed away. I had my first son at the age of 22. I was still using drugs and drinking at this time and was extremely lost. I didn't have any support. With my mom gone and I wasn't very close with my family, I tried doing it all on my own. I managed to quit drinking and using drugs during my pregnancy and for the first 16 months of my son's life. Right after he stopped nursing, I picked up right where I had left off, but this time it got worse fast. I now was trying to maintain my drug and alcohol addiction while taking care of a toddler and myself alone with absolutely no support. I made a lot of horrible choices and did things I would never do sober. I didn't know how to be a parent. My son and I moved back to River Falls in 2017 when I finally had enough. My brother had been staying in a sober house in River Falls. This sober house happened to be run by the man who my mom was in a relationship before she had passed. My brother asked me if I had a problem. I said yes, and I knew right there I needed to leave. This is what started my recovery journey. Recovery was not easy at first. I was still navigating single parenthood, but I now had some support. I reconnected with my mom's significant other. I also started to develop new relationships. I now have 3 kids. Jaden is 10, Kyler is 5, who you just saw, and Lydia is 2.5. I first discovered the Family Resource Center when my middle child, Kyler, was 1.5 years old. At the time, I was a stay-at-home mom who had been navigating parenthood in the wake of COVID-19. I was searching for something to get us out of the house, a way to meet other moms and provide my son with opportunities to play and interact with other children. That's when I found Play and Learn. It was just what we needed. Every week, Kyler and I attended the sessions with Marla. It wasn't just about him socializing, it was about me too. Being a stay-at-home mom can feel very isolating, but the connections I made were huge for my mental and emotional well-being. I had developed many friendships through the Family Resource Center that I wouldn't have today if it wasn't for Play and Learn. This program also evolved into something more meaningful, home visits with Marla. I'd heard about home visits and how impactful, practical, and life-changing they were. I knew this was something we needed. I made a self-referral, which ultimately changed my life. These visits were eye-opening. Marla didn't just bring activities and teach me about child development. She brought knowledge, resources, and unyielding support. I still remember the first activity she introduced. It was so simple yet so impactful. The Family Resource Center provided my family with not just encouragement, but tangible support. Whether it was gift cards, household essentials, or even a new car seat for my daughter. As someone in recovery, I was overwhelmed with joy when the Family Resource Center decided to facilitate Recovering Together cafes. These cafes have had a significant impact on my mental health and well-being. Each month, I get to participate in a recovery group unlike any I have ever experienced. These are different than Alcoholics Anonymous and Celebrate Recovery groups. These cafes allow more intimate space to connect with others while cultivating vitality. Through all this, I was in college for my bachelor's degree in human services. The Family Resource Center was a huge support. I am so grateful for Marla for answering all my questions and helping me with papers. She was my biggest support. I have since graduated and will forever be grateful for Marla and the Family Resource Center for all the support and input. One of the greatest gifts we received was a referral for Kyler to the Birth to 3 program. At the time, Kyler was barely saying a few words, and as a parent, I wasn't sure how to address it or even that it needed attention. Thanks to the Family Resource Center, we got connected to the right services. After just 1 year in the program, Kyler blossomed. His language and speech caught up beautifully. Today, he's chatting away, keeping up with my talkative 10-year-old. For that, I'm eternally grateful. They caught a delay that I might have overlooked and walked alongside us during the entire process, ensuring he is ready to enter school to succeed. Beyond these specific services, there's something even greater that the Family Resource Center has given me, the confidence to grow as a parent. When I signed up for Play and Learn over 3 years ago, I had no idea how much I would learn and evolve. Parenting is hard and it carries with it its patterns and cycles that can be difficult to break. Thanks to the guidance I've received, I feel empowered to do just that, to break those cycles and create a better foundation for my children. I was never taught how to be a parent. I wasn't supported through my teenage years and into adulthood. I didn't have someone to come alongside me as I was trying to figure out how to parent my child on my own. The skills I've gained transformed the way I parent. I now have a deep understanding of child development, positive discipline, and how to foster meaningful connections with my kids. I've grown in ways I never even imagined. Today, I'm proud to give back to this amazing organization. I serve on the Parent Advisory Council, advocating for parents like me in our community. I'm also a parent partner assisting in Play and Learn classes and doing childcare for Recovery Together cafes. These experiences have been a great opportunity for growth and leadership. As a stay-at-home mom, I haven't had work experience in over 5 years. Being on the Parent Advisory Council and being a parent partner builds my resume, which makes me more employable. Through these roles, I have forged incredible relationships with moms, educators, and families, connections I will forever cherish. As I reflect on the journey that brought me to this stage today, I can say without hesitation that the Family Resource Center St. Croix Valley changed my life. Their unwavering support gave me the tools to be a better parent, help my family thrive, and the community I didn't know I needed. I hope hearing my story provides a glimpse into the profound impact this organization has on families every day. Thank you.
Can we just thank Kelly one more time? That was extremely. Well, I'm not the only one teared up, Kelly. That was really inspirational, as were our other highlights. This has been a great celebration so far of all the great work happening in the Valley, and then to have a personal story, and then those 3 cute kids help us all. It just caps off why we're all here, right? So to honor that really great commitment this community is making, I would like to now invite Carla up. And Carla is going to talk about recognition for someone who's making a powerful difference in the community. Thanks, Carla.
Hi, everyone. We're honored to present the very first Little Moments Count First 1,000 Days Champion Award here in the St. Croix Valley. This award was established to celebrate local individuals, organizations, or coalitions who go above and beyond to support parents and families during the first 3 years of a child's life. This award recognizes those who show up with care and compassion and consistency to walk alongside families during this transformative and important time. This was our first year launching this award, and we were truly moved by the numerous thoughtful nominations that came in from across the St. Croix Valley. It's clear that this region is full of people who care deeply about families and who are doing meaningful and often quiet work to make sure that every child has the chance to thrive. While choosing just one champion was not easy, today we are thrilled to recognize a team of people whose impact has been deeply felt by the people around them. Please join me in congratulating the Pierce County Public Health Birth to 3 team as this year's Little Moments Count First 1,000 Days champions. We're gonna have the whole team. I know you guys are here today, so we're gonna have you all come up here. Yeah. And then to help introduce this amazing team, we've invited their nominator and someone who knows them very well, AZ Snyder, who will share more information about their dedication to children and families.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm AZ Snyder, and I have the privilege, and I mean privilege, of supervising the Pierce County Birth to 3 team. I'm an epidemiologist. I came into this position knowing nothing about child development, and now that I know a little bit more, I am just in awe of these ladies right here. The Birth to 3 program, in case you're not familiar with it, is a statewide initiative dedicated to supporting children under 3 who experience developmental delays or disabilities. By partnering with families, the program promotes each child's development while strengthening families' knowledge, skills, and confidence in supporting their child. I love this program because it's not about the experts telling the parents what to do. It's really about the experts listening to the context, listening to the parents, and then coming up with plans together. Last year, the Pierce County team provided teaching, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and service coordination to 182 children. This team right here, Lori, Caitlin, Allie, Melissa, and Katrina, consistently go above and beyond the expectations set by state and federal program guidelines. They walk alongside the parents we serve, some of whom have just discovered that their child has a life-altering disability. They listen intently to each family's needs and goals and do everything within their power to identify and secure the right resources. Time and time again, I've watched this team fiercely advocate for families at every level of decision-making, applying for additional resources and actively seeking out new strategies to help families meet their child's goals. No matter how many wonderful things I could say about this team, the families we serve say it best. And here are some of the heartfelt comments. It was really hard to choose comments that we've collected from families over the years when they're being discharged from the program. One mom commented, Melissa, our physical therapist, was far more helpful than any other professional we've encountered. Everything from ordering equipment to navigating funding to exercises made a difference. I'm going to say on the survey that I strongly agree that I feel prepared for the next stage, but really only as prepared as we can be without her now along for the ride anymore. I feel like a big kid who has to move out on their own now. Another parent said, Pierce County Birth to 3 staff have been part of our lives for years. All 3 of my daughters have thrived through physical and occupational therapy for their gross motor skills, made social and cognitive advances, and we look forward to the weekly meetings almost as much as playtime with grandparents. You are family now, thank you. And lastly, this one made me tear up a little bit because it really goes to not just the difference that we make for kids, but also for their families. My experience with the Birth to 3 program was absolutely amazing. Everyone from my son's team became like family for us. We are so appreciative for all the help we received during our son's first 3 years. Our son has spina bifida, so we were unsure of what the future looked like for him. With lots of help from this team, he has a very bright future, and his parents are a lot less overwhelmed, and we feel we are now able to be better parents. I will keep in touch with his growth and progress. We are forever grateful, but we have a complaint. This program should be Birth to 21. Thank you for your time.
So much to celebrate, right? Our time is coming quickly to the end and I could say a bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to, other than to say thank you. And then the very flexible panel is going to add some last words of wisdom, since their wisdom is greater than mine for sure. So thanks for being with us today. Thanks for the energy and the commitment and for caring about this, whether you're in this room, even in it's still raining, a really rainy day, or whether you're online, this matters because the more of us that are equipped to understand and come alongside, like Kelly was saying, people who came alongside her, it's going to make a big difference. So thank you also to the St. Croix Valley Foundation. It has made this work possible, probable, and also added the momentum and the fuel for us to continue to do it. You can support this work through the First 1,000 Days Fund, and I know that there's information in the program about that with a QR code. And all the partners, I mean, you heard from a few, there's many, many, many more. Thanks for what you're doing in community. And we have a whole St. Croix Valley Council who's been over the last number of months bringing their energy and ideas together to plan things like this, to think about how to train other community members. And if you're interested in joining this network in a more formal way, we'd love to have you join us for those council meetings. So it's an open invitation and you can talk to Katie, Wade, or Carlin, or others, and Kristen, there, folks about that if you wish. But instead of me closing, I gave the panel a really impossible challenge. I kind of warned them, I didn't warn them about this one though. So they each have been for the last, I don't know, 3 minutes, thinking how to answer this question in 10 words or less. And they have a microphone over there, so they're gonna stand up and share. Question is, what advice do you have for our community for how we can make little moments count and really support and walk alongside families in this endeavor? Tom's brave. He's
For sure.
first.
I don't know, is this on? Do I have to turn it on? On, okay. 10 words, you ready? Curriculum, programs are important. Ultimately, it's people that change people.
along a similar vein, I was going to say, fostering relationship with each other, with your kids, between agencies is the key to the ballgame.
10 words is a challenge, but I challenge everyone, be part of that circle of care. Just smile at the mom, smile at the dad. You're doing a great job. Relationships are important.
Yeah, I'll pick up on that theme, to see them, to love them, and to not just feel it, but to show
That was impressive. I just want to, again, last thanks, and know that there are both, there's both information out and some time to network and some time to talk with our panelists and community agencies. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again for being here.